Hollywood remembers its brightest stars, with paved stars and marble monuments. But history rarely speaks of the ones who built the foundation beneath them, only to be buried by it. Imagine the man who defined the modern nightmare, the man who wore the dark cape of Dracula, whose piercing gaze, frozen in 1931, still chills the world today. Would you believe that in his final years, Bela Lugosi lived in a cramped, two-room apartment, his phone silent, his bank account empty, and his legendary cape gathering dust in a corner? For every legend with a mansion in Beverly Hills, there were others who ended their lives in rented rooms, charity hospitals, or the forgotten corners of Los Angeles. They were the architects of our dreams, yet they died in the ruins of their own reality. Penniless, overlooked, erased by the very industry they helped build. Tonight, we step into the shadows to revisit 10 lives of brilliant unsung heroes. These are the giants of cinema, whose light faded long before the final curtain fell. This is the truth behind the Golden Age. 1. Bela Lugosi, 1882 to 1956. We begin with a name that is synonymous with horror, Bela Lugosi. In 1931, his performance as Dracula became the blueprint for every vampire that followed. He was a symbol of Hollywood's early imagination, but the industry had a cruel way of thanking its pioneers. For his iconic role in Dracula, Lugosi was paid a mere $3,500. That's roughly $500 a week for a performance that built a multi-billion-dollar genre. Because royalties didn't exist, Lugosi never saw a dime from the countless re-releases or the merchandise that bore his face. As he aged, studios saw only a caricature. They saw a man trapped by his own accent and his own cape. By the 1950s, he was taking roles in Z-grade movies for almost nothing, just to pay for a modest apartment. When he passed in 1956, he was buried in his Dracula costume, perhaps the only thing of value he had left. A giant of the shadows, forgotten by the light he once ruled. 2. Marie Prevost, 1898 to 1937. Marie Prevost was once the golden girl of the silent era, a beauty whose charm carried her from Mack Sennett's slapstick comedies to high-status leading lady roles. But in Hollywood, fame is as fragile as a film reel. When the industry shifted to sound, Marie's career didn't just stumble, it collapsed. The studios that once threw galas in her honor offered her zero support as her financial situation deteriorated. By 1934, she had no work at all. She was forced into crash diets to try and land bit parts, which only fueled a downward spiral of alcoholism and malnutrition. On January 23, 1937, her neighbors heard her dog, a dachshund named Maxie, barking incessantly. When police broke in, they found the 40-year-old actress face down on her bed. She had been dead for 3 days. Her estate? It was valued at exactly $300. Her death was so tragic it became the primary catalyst for the creation of the motion picture and television country house and hospital. 3. John Gilbert, 1897 to 1936. John Gilbert was Hollywood royalty. During the peak of the silent era, he was the great lover, earning a staggering $10,000 a week. He was the swashbuckling heartthrob who starred alongside Greta Garbo. Then came the talkies. Legend says his voice was too high for the screen, but the truth was darker. Studio politics and a personal feud with MGM boss, Louis B. Mayer, destroyed him. Mayer assigned him low-quality scripts and buried his promotion. Within years, the man who lived in a hilltop mansion was unemployed and penniless. He drank himself into a fatal heart attack at just 38 years old. A king of the silent screen, forgotten before his story was finished. 4. Dana Andrews. Dana Andrews was the face of the 1940s, calm, composed, and quietly magnetic in noir classics like Lorre and The Best Years of Our Lives. He was a pillar of the studio system, but the industry changed faster than Dana could adapt. Heavy drinking, often used to cope with the immense pressure of fame, began to erode his career. By the 1960s, the leading man roles were a whisper of the past. Andrews ended up working in real estate and giving lectures to help others struggling with alcoholism. By the time he passed in 1992, his phone had long since stopped ringing, and his final years were marked by a gentle, fading obscurity. He was a leading man of yesterday, left behind by the tomorrow he helped create. We are halfway through our list, but the stories are getting even more personal. Coming up, we'll see the child star who was killed over a $50 debt, and the man who became the first television Superman, only to find the cape was actually a prison. Stick around to see who truly paid the price for Hollywood's glory. 5. Frances Farmer, 1913 to 1970. Frances Farmer entered Hollywood with a brilliance that was impossible to ignore. She was raw, intelligent, and fiercely independent. But in the 1930s, the studio system valued control over individuality. When Frances refused to play the starlet game, the industry turned on her. Following a series of public outbursts and a battle with mental health, she was institutionalized against her will. Away from the cameras, she lived a life of total anonymity. At one point, she was working as a laundry clerk at the Olympic Hotel in Seattle, the same city where she once dreamed of being a great dramatist. She passed away in 1970 with no wealth and no Hollywood epilogue. 6. Lon Chaney Jr., 1906 to 1973. Lon Chaney Jr. carried the weight of a legendary father. As the star of The Wolfman, he became the face of Universal's monsters, but being a monster only paid the bills as long as the genre was in style. As horror trends shifted towards sci-fi, the roles dried up. Lon struggled with severe alcoholism and failing health. In his final years, he was living in a small California home, isolated and nearly broke. The man who once stood as a giant of the shadows now faced the very human fear of being forgotten. 7. Carl Switzer, 1927 to 1959. Everyone knew him as Alfalfa from Our Gang. His freckles and mischievous charm made him a household name in the 1930s. But child stars are often discarded once they lose their cuteness. Switzer received zero royalties when The Little Rascals became a TV hit. To survive, he took odd jobs as a bartender, a dog breeder, and a hunting guide. In 1959, he was shot and killed during a dispute over a $50 debt involving a lost hunting dog. A childhood star left behind by the world that once adored him. 8. Gail Russell. Gail Russell was never meant for the spotlight. She was shy and painfully unsure of herself. Paramount groomed her into a star at 18, but the pressure was a mountain she couldn't climb. Her career unraveled due to severe stage fright and alcoholism. When she passed away in 1961, at just 36 years old, she was found in a small, sparsely furnished apartment. The house was full of empty bottles, and she was suffering from extreme malnutrition. She was a fragile soul lost in an industry built for stronger armor. 9. Peter Lorre, 1904 to 1964. With his bulging eyes and soft, accented voice, Peter Lorre was indispensable to film noir and horror. He was a master of complexity in films like M and The Maltese Falcon, but Hollywood typecast him as a sinister foreigner. His paycheck shrank as he was forced to accept roles far beneath his talent just to stay afloat. He died in 1964, plagued by debt and health issues, far from the spotlight that had once recognized his brilliance. 10. George Reeves, 1914 to 1959. George Reeves was the face of a generation as television's first Superman. He embodied strength, but that cape became a cage. Casting directors refused to see past the tights. Work slowed to a trickle, and the financial pressures of maintaining a star lifestyle became unbearable. In 1959, he was found dead from a gunshot wound in his home. Whether it was suicide or something darker, he died with little wealth, a symbol of strength with a life far more fragile than the world knew. Hollywood is a place built on light, flashbulbs, and silver screens. But these stories remind us that behind every moment of brilliance lies a fragile reality. Fame is fleeting, and the spotlight can vanish long before the final curtain. These 10 heroes gave their talent and their dreams to an industry that promised nothing in return. But if we remember their names today, their stories haven't been lost. Which of these legends surprised you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep their light alive. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next decade of stars.